Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 3rd, 2025 Agenda Meeting of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. My name is Katie Sieben. I'm the chair of the commission. First, I'll take the roll of the other commissioners who are present for today's hearing. Commissioner Partridge.
Here.
Commissioner Hom.
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
And Commissioner Tuma.
Here.
A quorum is present, and we will conduct our votes via voice vote. Mr. Manning, good morning. Thank you for all of your work. Please introduce the item for today.
Good morning, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Item number 1 on the agenda is docket number E015/PA-24198 in the matter of petition of Minnesota Power for acquisition of ALLETE by Canada Pension Plan Investment Board and Global Infrastructures Partners. Today is scheduled for Commissioner deliberations continuing from oral arguments held on September 25th. The issues before the Commission today is the acquisition of ALLETE by Canada Pension Plan Investment Board and Global Infrastructure Partners consistent with the public interest. Should the Commission approve the acquisition of ALLETE by Canada Pension Plan Investment Board and Global Infrastructure Partners? And is the proposed settlement between the Department of Commerce and ALLETE consistent with the public interest? Since last week, several new items have been filed in the docket. Minnesota Power filed on behalf of itself, petitioners, the Department of Commerce, Energy Sense, and the Labor parties to update its settlement stipulation, including recommended decision options consistent with the stipulation and a financial benefit filing estimating the value of the settlement's terms as amended through the 30th to ratepayers. Public interest interveners, consisting of the Office of Attorney General, Large Power Interveners, Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota, Sierra Club, and CURE, filed joint recommended decision options. Sierra Club and CURE jointly filed additional proposed decision options. Large Power Interveners filed additional proposed decision options. Staff filed a comprehensive compilation of decision options and a list of decision options consistent with the settlement stipulation filed by resolving parties as amended on the 24th and 30th. Settling parties filed a response to the decision options by other interveners. The OAG, CUB, Sierra Club, and CURE filed a response to the supplemental benefit filing. LPI also filed a response to the supplemental benefit filing and suggested an additional decision option. Staff has one correction to the staff-filed comprehensive compilation identified by Sierra Club and CURE in a filing. On page 11 of 23, a sentence was excluded from Sierra Club and CURE H. Prior to the sentence, a clean, firm plan shall comply with the following criteria. The following should have been included. By December 15, 2025, Minnesota Power shall file the clean, firm plan in the IRP docket, accompanied by a qualitative description of the scenario and its costs and benefits, as well as a qualitative analysis of how the scenario performs on the factors listed in Minnesota Rules Part 7843.0500 Subpart 3. Finally, Commissioner Hom filed a proposed motion. Staff and parties are available for question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manning. Again, we appreciate all of your work and the work of our staff over the past few weeks and really the past year or so since this petition was filed. Commissioners and parties, I think the best way to proceed today is to first take questions from commissioners to the proposed motion that was filed by Commissioner Hom. And that was filed, as Mr. Manning said, into the docket yesterday. It includes many of the staff alternative decision options as outlined in the compilation of staff decision options, and then some other decision options that Commissioner Hom can speak to. But for ease of getting through the morning, commissioners, let's begin and orient ourselves around Commissioner Hom's proposed motion. I would suggest that we begin with you, Commissioner Hom, and you're welcome to explain it or ask the parties any questions. And then after we're done with questions on Commissioner Hom's motion, we'll see if we need a break. I imagine we would at that point. And then my hope is that we'll be ready to move into deliberations following that break yet this morning. But it's largely up to commissioners, and what questions you have or discussions you'd like to have with parties this morning. So, Commissioner Hom, why don't you begin?
Thank you, Chair Stephen. I have a question to the partners. I understand that GIP is under BlackRock, and BlackRock is a publicly traded company. It owns some asset, but also many that 11 or 12 trillion dollar, whatever people are talking, mostly somebody else's money that BlackRock is managing. Am I correct?
And Mr. Bram, welcome again. A reminder to all parties, the first time you're addressing the commission today, please introduce yourself and the organization that you're representing.
Thank you, Chair Stephen. Commissioner Hom, Jonathan Bram from Global Infrastructure Partners. Commissioner Hom, you're exactly correct. BlackRock manages $12 trillion. It doesn't have $12 trillion. It's all managed as a fiduciary for pension funds and other investors who are principally focused on financial well-being after work, so for retirement. So,
okay, and then portion of the private equity under the BlackRock, what do you know the percent or the amount that BlackRock, under BlackRock, what is the portion of the private equity?
Commissioner Hom, I'm going to estimate, based on my knowledge, which is not complete, private capital, which would include both private equity, which is very small, private infrastructure investment, and private credit, so loans to non-public companies, private credit. I believe it's less than $1 trillion, so it's less than 10% of the company, is my guess.
Okay.
We can get, if that's important, we can get you the exact figure.
No, I just want to explain to everybody my understanding of the overall structure of the BlackRock, because a lot of people had a concern that BlackRock owns your company and then their behavior may have a negative impact to the ALLETE. So that's why I'm just asking this question. So ballpark is good enough for me. In that case, the BlackRock also owns iShare, which they bought from the other investment bank some years ago, right?
Correct.
So that means a lot of companies' share is owned by BlackRock through that process, but it's not BlackRock actually own that money. It is somebody else who's investing their retirement fund is the owner of that iShare.
BlackRock manages all of that capital, both the public capital and the infrastructure capital, as a fiduciary for the ultimate owners. And that's really what's paramount.
Okay, so you are going the direction that I was going to go. So as a GIP fund manager, you are in charge of it. What is your fiduciary duty within the BlackRock company? Can you sacrifice your investment for other BlackRock's interest?
No. Our responsibilities as a fiduciary are so paramount when my computer becomes inactive. The word fiduciary in its Webster's definition is what the screensaver is in the entire firm. If we did that, because the capital that BlackRock is managing is all entrusted to it, if that were to happen, it would go from 12 trillion, it would go from the largest to the smallest very, very quickly. If we were to somehow disadvantage ALLETE to benefit some other investment in some other place, our obligation to our investors is to put their interests always first. And that is, that's something that even as GIP grew, and we were large, nowhere near like BlackRock large, but we were a large manager. That's something that's really essential to what we do.
Okay, thank you. So if there's any misbehavior happen on the BlackRock, that is governed by SEC since they are publicly traded company.
Yep, the SEC and other international equivalents all regulate everything that GIP does, even before we we merged into BlackRock.
Okay, thank you. So similar question to CPPIB. So you have investment in this ALLETE, in this case. What is your fiduciary duty to your pension fund?
Thanks, Commissioner Hom, for the question. Chair Sieben, and to introduce myself, Andrew Alley, Canada Pension Plan Investment Board. Very similar to what Mr. Bram said, we have to be responsible for the investments we're making, and our fiduciary duty is to manage the pool of capital for the Canada Pension Plan. And we cannot have conflicts for one benefit at the expense of another, because for similar reasons that Mr. Bram mentioned, there would be significant ramifications if we were to manage in that way. Our reputation will be at risk, and we would not be able to move forward and make further investments such as this type of investment.
Okay, thank you. And then I was attending all the evidentiary hearing except a small portion of it. I learned that even you guys cannot share your highly confidential data to each other. That's what I learned during that evidentiary hearing. Is it true that even you don't share any highly confidential financial data to each other between GIP and CPPIB?
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Hom, that's correct. We haven't shared the confidential information with each other.
Because you have that fiduciary duty to make sure that you protect your own interest, not as a group, but your own interest.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
To Ms. Katie, I think you saw Commissioner Hom's decision options. I appreciate you putting them together. I think I could categorize them this way. We're not going to make pre-decisions, okay? So I don't think it's undoing the settlement, but I just want to confirm from you whether you have any problems with Commissioner Hom's filings. They seem to make sense to me when I read them. And I think actually talked to our staff and briefings about making sure we're not making any predeterminations, particularly on issues of affiliated interest and also issues of the breakup of ALLETE into the new Minnesota Power separate entity as opposed to a subsidiary. So give me your thoughts on Hom's decisions as it relates to that.
Ms. Katie.
Good morning, Chair Sieben, Commissioners. Jennifer Katie on behalf of Minnesota Power. We see it the same way, Commissioner Tuma. There was nothing in our settlement that assumed any predetermination. We support Commissioner Hom's decision option and believe that's consistent with our understanding as the settlement agreement was drafted.
And to the partners, you're obviously the big signatures on this that we're concerned about, because a lot of this concern was this affiliated interest discussion, which is real. Okay, we want to understand it. This is a new, different way of doing it as opposed to, say, some of the other mergers we've seen in the past. You want to let this company be its company, but you also own some other companies. I'm understanding even aggressively going after other utilities, things like that. So we see that happening. Help us out. Do you have any problems with Commissioner Hom's decision options regarding the predetermination of our decisions in the future?
Mr. Bram, you just need to speak more directly into your microphone, I was told.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I mumbled sometimes. Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, no, we're supportive of this. Trust, as I've said, is our stock in trade, and establishing that trust, maintaining that trust is paramount to how we will, if you support us, how we will manage this. It's essential.
And to my Canadian friends,
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, thanks for checking with us and no problems with decision options.
okay. You know, on Commissioner Hom's decision options, that's pretty much what I have. I just wanted to make sure we are tracking that fits within some of the proposed decision options, Madam Chair. So
One question I have for the parties is it's contained in Commissioner Hom's overall motion is the merging of combined new Sieben 28 and Partridge 38. And in Part A of that, of 3A, if I'm looking at the right thing, it says that within 90 days of the order, MP shall file an alternative resource plan scenario. And my recollection from the hearing last week was that, or at least the way I was thinking about it, was that putting a firm date in is better than 90 days after the order for a variety of reasons. And so what date do you think is consistent with what is the spirit of this, your support of the combined decision options, but is not just 90 days after the order, Ms. Katie? We had discussed, sorry to interrupt, we had discussed December 15th, and I was thinking that's what was going to be in the new combined decision option. So does December 15th work instead of 90 days after the order?
Thank you, Chair Sieben. We had discussed this quite a bit with the other parties. We do think that the IRP procedural schedule will need to be updated because right now there are comments due in October, and I think everyone agrees they'd like to see the new filing and then comment. We were thinking about doing some stakeholder engagement before filing the plan, and sometimes that can take an extra little bit of time. So we could do it by December 15th if we moved it, to maybe mid-January. That would give us a little bit more time to confer with parties to hopefully find as much consensus as we can ahead of filing. So that was just a little bit of the thinking that we've had over the last week.
Commissioner Partridge, do you have thoughts about this? I mean, I'm fine with January 15th if it does give parties more time to work on it. I just want it to be more specific than 90 days after the order for a lot of reasons. And so wondering what you think.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. I agree. If January 15th works for you, I think having a date in here would be preferable, given that there may be reconsideration or delays in the effective date of the final order. And I know in here also there is, I can't remember where, I mentioned that the executive secretary can, I thought it was in here, but I'm not seeing it, modify the timeline of the IRP. And so, okay, thank you. So if we can pick the January 15th date, then the executive secretary could reorient the comment schedule around that.
Does any party that especially participates in IRPs have an objection to putting in January 15th in our order rather than 90 days? Or anybody have a problem with that they want to say? No. Okay. Why don't we think that everybody's okay with that at this point? And then on other matters, Commissioner Partridge, did you have other things you wanted to ask?
Thank you, Chair Sieben. I have one question for Commissioner Hom and perhaps other commissioners, and that is just, sorry, I've got so many copies now and versions of the decision options. It's going to take me just a minute. I think decision option number 22 had authorized the executive secretary to open up a docket related to affiliate interests broadly. I'm wondering if, given that we're not making any predetermination here, if that is something we want to do now, or if that's something we want to do at a different time, or not at all.
Commissioner Hom?
Thank you, Chair Sieben. Yeah, Commissioner Partridge, that's why I start the conversation or question with the GIP and CPPIB. I understand there is a significant concern from the opposing parties about the potential abuse of the affiliate interest. But also checking the facts, for example, iShare owns probably, at BlackRock on the paper, owns more than 5% of the Dell computer company. If Minnesota Power update their computer system, it can easily go above $50,000. So that's why a lot of these things potentially, the concern by opposing party is whether practically is it enforceable. That's one. Second, there's an internal control clearly that each fund and each fund manager has a fiduciary duty to protect their fund. And then also BlackRock is on the SEC regulation. Any misbehavior within that, they should be answered to the SEC on that part. So that's why we can just go as it is, and we usually do, and we can just focus on what we already doing in the rate case or affiliate interest filing. If company forget to file some affiliate interest, they have to answer during the rate case. They may not be able to recover that cost. And then also, if they forgot to file that, I think we can clearly raise that concern by other parties. I think we have a lot of opposing party really eyeing on this company. So I have no concern with that. And also, I don't know whether it's economically rational to investor wants to grow this company so they can get their investment back, including acquisition premium and any concession they are giving based on this settlement and commission additional conditions, which is close to $200 million. Will they misbehave to gain about few $1,000s doing that to harm the overall health of the company? I think I understand that we shouldn't regulate by faith. I agree with the Commissioner Sullivan that, yeah, we shouldn't regulate by faith, but I strongly believe in our system. We have a system to manage this. We have done that very well, and then our rate case and other financial filing can handle that. So that's why I don't think we need that 22.
Thank you. That makes sense to me. I appreciate the explanation.
Madam Chair, I was only focusing on the late filing. I did have a couple questions on the bigger filing, which I assume will be decision options. So just to Mr. Shardlow on Energy Sense, I saw some changes to my proposed 43, which is the effort to do the arrears and efforts that you've had actually. So I just wanted to make sure 42 and 43 as amended, you're fine with. It's what you signed it, but I just want to make sure you're comfortable with where things are going. I didn't put in dates and everything, so I actually wanted you guys to dig into it, so I appreciate that you did. I just want to just hear your assessment of where 42 and 43 sit.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Shardlow.
Chair, Commissioner Tuma, thank you for the question. Yes.
Please state your name.
Oh, pardon me, George Shardlow with the Energy Sense Coalition. Yes, we're comfortable, and just for context, the changes that you see before you do give specific timelines. They also clarify that in addition to arrearage forgiveness, the agreement also includes sort of an expansion of the flat $20 discount. We also, while ECC was the primary party to this settlement, we wanted to open the ensuing deliberations to other parties if they so choose, and wanted to create a timeline that would allow for that engagement and any updates to tariffs language and any additional deliberations. So that those are the changes that you see before you.
Thank you. Mr. Edstrom, I know that you're still opposed to the overall settlement, but this is one of the elements that got me somewhat comfortable moving forward, not only the element, but one of the elements. I just wanted to know if you had any concerns and any willingness to continue to engage in this effort.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Tuma. Brian Edstrom with the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota. And yeah, we appreciate Mr. Shardlow's comments and would be happy to continue working with Energy Sense and Minnesota Power on their affordability programs and trying to ensure that those are as successful as they can be.
Thank you. And to Ms. Katie, obviously, one of the things I thought was kind of somewhat missing from the settlement, I know you're working on big pictures, was compliance, and looking at some of these issues. And I think what we watch is a big deal. And so one of the things that got me over the hump was this. So I just want to make sure and hear from you your commitment to continue to work to accomplish what you've promised here, which is still has a lot of details to fill out. So I just want to hear from the company that's your intention.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, yes, we are committed to executing everything that's been agreed to, and our compliance team is already working on all the things that we've agreed to do and will report, and we look forward to doing that.
And I hear from Ms. Tom, she's looking forward to working with you guys, so.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I had from that.
Mr. Dornfeld, could you please state your name and the organization you're representing for the record?
Good morning, Chair Sieben. Richard Dornfeld, Assistant Attorney General, appearing today on behalf of the Minnesota Department of Commerce.
Mr. Dornfeld, thank you for your work in this case. Would you agree that Minnesota Statute 216B.50 Subdivision 1, which cites that the controlling legal standard as applied to this case is, quote, consistent with the public interest? I guess my question more directly is, do you agree that one of the significant statutes the Commission should consider when approving the acquisition is whether this transaction is consistent with the public interest?
Chair Sieben, Commissioners, yes, the Department agrees that 216B50 is applicable to this transaction.
And as we weigh this statute and the other evidence in the case and the filings from the parties, would you agree that there was disagreement earlier in the case over whether the petition did meet the public interest?
Yes, Chair Sieben, I agree that there's been disputes about whether or not the transaction is consistent with the public interest standard in the set forth in the statute.
And I think, and the way I've been viewing this is our decision, we don't need to explicitly decide between either no net harm or whether there's a specific net benefit test. But overall, the Commission needs to look at the final petition that's in front of us and make a reasonable determination of whether the overall package, to put it in layman's terms, is in the public interest. Do you agree with that?
Chair Sieben, yeah, I generally agree with that the task before the Commission is to determine whether the transaction as proposed today with the amended settlement and additional decision options that the Commission is considering is consistent with the public interest.
I just want to read a portion of the ALJ report, which I think is pretty critical to the overall decision of whether the Commission should find that the petition is in the public interest. The ALJ described the standard that I just kind of mentioned in conclusions 12 and 13 as saying, she said, to determine whether a transaction is consistent with the public interest, perceived detriments are weighed against perceived benefits to the public. The Commission considers whether it is reasonably likely that a transaction will either benefit or harm ratepayers. The Commission approves transactions when the benefits are sufficient to justify the proposal. The Commission likewise rejects transactions where the potential costs to ratepayers are too high and the potential benefits too uncertain, end quote. And Mr. Dornfeld, I just wanted to, again, give you an opportunity to summarize what you think when the Department of Commerce signed on to a stipulation in July, what do you think were the top benefits to the public of reaching that agreement with the partners?
Chair Sieben, thank you for the question.
I think I said to the partners. Did I just say that? I meant to the public. I just am replaying what I said, and I think it came out wrong. So what I was hoping you could do, again, sorry if I said it wrong, is summarize the stipulation that you signed with the partners, that the Department of Commerce signed, that included things like the $50 million in clean firm funding. Those costs will never be recoverable by ratepayers. The ring fencing provisions, other things that overall made the petition, I think, better. If you could just summarize them.
Sure. Commissioner Sieben, I think from the department's perspective, the settlement that we agreed to with the petitioners improves the transaction because I think first and foremost, it captures sort of the essential benefit of the transaction, which is the guaranteed access to capital. The department feels comfortable with how the settlement ensures that access and the enforcement mechanisms that exist to ensure that happens over the next few years. Beyond that provision, as the chair mentioned, the creation of a clean firm tech fund, some of the ratepayers benefits around a rate case stay out and an immediate ROE reduction. The department found those to be valuable. The service quality metrics and penalties for noncompliance, what the department viewed as important. The various reporting requirements around credit ratings and distributions to the partners in future years. We thought that those were important. Make sure the additional governance protections around the board and some of the additional affiliate interest related requirements. We thought those were important. I think in general, it's important to view the settlement and the terms that the commission has added since then as a package. No single provision, in our view, makes the transaction consistent with the public interest, but together it gets the transaction over the finish line.
No, I appreciate that characterization. And I was going to turn to the company perhaps to outline the attachment 1 of your filing, which we asked for, and I appreciate you articulated and laid out for the public and for the commission the additional key, I think they're key, or it does say key additional financial and other benefits now of the overall petition that's in front of the commission. And so, Ms. Katie, if you could please articulate some of those provisions that the settling parties agreed to after further discussion and negotiations that you think will also benefit Minnesota Power customers in the long term.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. Commissioners, I agree with Mr. Dornfeld that it should be viewed as a total package. And I think what you see before you today is the culmination of a lot of collaborative work with interested stakeholders to continue to make the petition better, not only for customers, but also for our employees and communities as well. When we look at what kind of is the total value of all the work done to date with all of the parties here with us today, by our research, no other utility acquisition in America is generating this amount of value per customer, which we estimate to be approximately $200 million. But what I think is important and what we would like to note is beyond the items that you can assign a direct quantitative amount to, like the $50 million clean firm tech fund, the $50 million in rate credits, the $10 million in weatherization work. There are a number of additional benefits for workers. So kind of first ever neutrality agreement executed with IBEW Local 31, additional workforce protections. Mr. Dornfeld mentioned service quality, which I think is important to the company, to our customers, to our communities to maintain excellent levels of service. Governance provisions that Mr. Dornfeld mentioned. Also, there are significant ring fencing provisions, books and records, reporting, and enforceability. And so I think taken together, significant quantitative benefits in terms of $200 million in direct benefits, but also a package of additional protections that overall make this a deal that we're proud to be a part of.
And Ms. Katie, would you agree that you would characterize that many of these financial benefits that will benefit Minnesota Power customers, but for the acquisition, they would not receive them?
Chair Steven, commissioners, absolutely none of these financial benefits exist without this transaction.
And so when parties then file late filings again that say things like, there are no conditions that could be added that would overcome the petitioner's failure to meet their burden to prove the acquisition as proposed is consistent with the public interest, that rings hollow to me. It seems to me that our duty as a commission is to take the law that I just read you a portion of 216B.50 subdivision 1 and apply the petition, the overall package, and see, is this in the public's interest? And I think it's pretty clear that because of the collective work of the agency, of us, our staff, the process we've engaged in a public and legal manner, we have made the petition better, and it will be to the betterment of Minnesota Power customers. So I just want to be really clear to the public that I am incredibly proud of the work that the commission has done, including our staff, the parties that were involved in the proceeding for the past year and a half. I understand and could see that there was a lot of fighting, throughout the contested case proceeding. We can't control that here as the commission, but we can take what is presented to us, which I would say, again, the ALJ did a good job in her report in articulating and summarizing where the overall petition was at that point. And because of the collective work of partners, stakeholders, labor, environmental groups, and others, we've made the overall package better for Minnesota Power customers. So maybe that's my mic drop, but I'm excited to move to a deliberations and vote on this, and certainly appreciate the work that Commissioner Hom and my colleagues have done to help get us to a place collectively where overall we are bringing real value to Minnesota Power customers. Commissioners, other questions for Commissioner Hom, or do you want to take a break now and we can consult with staff and then come back and see if there are other questions and then hopefully move to a vote? Sound good? How much time would you like?
30 minutes.
Okay, how about we come back at 10:20? The commission stands in recess. The commission will come back from its recess, and first I'd like to ask the parties if anyone wanted to comment on the staff late filed decision options. Because they were filed late. Just covering our bases here. Okay, hearing no comments, then we'll move to commissioner deliberations. And Commissioner Hom, are you prepared to, or first I should ask, do any commissioners have additional questions for the parties before we move to deliberations? Okay, then Commissioner Hom, if you're ready to make a motion, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Stephen. I'd like to make a motion, and also I would like to make some statement why I am making that motion. So first of all, I'd like to make a motion to move my proposed motion filed yesterday with one revision, that is a specific date for the ILP filing to January 15th, 2026.
Okay, I don't think we need to put the motion out on the screen because it was filed and there's just that minor revision. But so go ahead, please, Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Stephen. I start with very strong skepticism in this transaction. I think probably you heard me in the meeting that when we were encouraging everybody to develop the records to making sure that this transaction is not harming the ratepayers. And I really appreciated department and opposing party, even your work created a lot of value to this overall proceeding. And I was at the evidentiary hearing, watching you testifying and arguing each other. And also I was at the public hearing 2 times at the Cloquet and at the Duluth. So I was watching how citizens and ratepayers are reacting to this transaction. That helped me to form my original decision additional decision options, and then decide to move this overall motion based on my comfortness that we try enough to protect our ratepayers with this transaction. Being said, I also appreciate these partners' willingness to be flexible. I was a bit surprised at how flexible they are to understand value of Minnesota Power at northern Minnesota. I heard people saying that Minnesota Power is not just a company. They are neighbors and community members, and they're opposing this transaction. I never heard anybody saying Minnesota Power is a bad company. I was really surprised because whenever I go to the public hearing, first thing I hear is that utility is bad. Your opening statements clearly reflects that you value that community membership of Minnesota Power. I hope you keep that there, because that is a way to grow this company. If you start to make local residents and Minnesota Power ratepayers mad, your interest, economic interest, is not going to be there, because their concern and complaint will come to us, and we are going to deal with it. In the long run, I understand you are a commercial entity, you need to make your profit, but our regulatory compact clearly states your interest will be protected when you protect our ratepayers. So company clearly understood, and they were doing their job. So it's not just your fiduciary duty to help your shareholder, but your fiduciary duty is making sure that ratepayers are protected, they get the reliable service at reasonable cost. That way your company can grow. That's our agreement, in my view. So hopefully two partners understand that, as you stated in the opening remarks, and let the management to manage the company well as they are doing it now. In overall, I think we had to compare the risk in the financial market versus a potential risk of two partners' misbehavior. Financial market risk we cannot control. These two guys can provide more, not 100%, but more sure capital to the company. There is no such a thing as 100%, but we have a higher probability. These guys can provide more stable equity to the company. Meantime, the market, we are not sure, given the market circumstance, like large industrial customers are very business cycle dependent companies. We have an issue with some company has to lay off and then shut down operation. That means a lot of those costs will be shifted to the residential and small commercial, and then it also potentially harm financial well-being of the company. Also, last spring, we had a scary moment when there is a wildfire. That's another big risk outside our control, and financial market will really react to it. These two partners can manage that risk, and then they can help ALLETE to grow in consistent with the Minnesota statute, and meantime, they are protecting ratepayers' interest. On the other side, the risk opposing party had a concern with, we have a more control over those risks. That's why I am strongly encouraging all those parties engaged in this proceeding to engage in rate case, resource plan, any other financial filing. You guys develop the record, bring it to us. If there is any misbehavior, we can deal with it. So a lot of those risks can be managed through our regulatory process. Another concern raised by Q was about the data center issue, and data center issue can be two-edged sword. I cannot say a lot to it, but please do not generalize what happened in PJM area because they are retail choice. Consequence is very different from PJM market to our state regulatory model. In those retail choice market, any wholesale market impact has a not necessarily one-to-one, but direct impact to the ratepayers. However, Minnesota, we regulate our utilities rates through the rate case proceeding. Any profit they make through the MISO market comes back 100% to the ratepayers. So there is a perception that data center will bring more harm to the ratepayers, but also potentially it can mitigate the risk we have. Particularly Minnesota Power has a very different characteristic. We have a 70 to 80% of their energy sale depends on large industrial customer. When some of those customers shut down their factory, MP can deal with that shock in two ways. One is selling to MISO market, which will not help 100%. That means they will shift that cost to the commercial and small commercial residential customers. That's the nature of the Minnesota Power. So I cannot say one way or another, but data center can at least be used to manage the risk of that business cycle. Being said, we need to do a lot of work. Once again, all our parties included in this proceeding need to watch out whenever they come to the commission for the rate design and final ESA, energy supply agreements. But please do not have a preconceived conclusion it's going to be bad for everybody. I think Minnesota Power case is unique. We can manage certain risk with that load if we can do a good job containing the cost and putting the cost to those incremental costs to those entities. But I think it's potentially open docket, so I cannot speak too much on it. But that, my point is, yes, our regulatory model is very different from the PJM state. That most of the 13, the original state in East is either in the New York or New England or PJM. All those states are retail choice. Their way of setting rate is very different from our way. So please do not generalize those information. A lot of media is generalizing that information and trying to apply it to Minnesota. No, we are very different. Probably you can see that in our rate case because, for example, transmission line ROE, federal rate is not applicable to our ratepayers. We set our own rates, and any differential will come to our ratepayers. So that's why we need to be careful generalizing that information. So data center, please see that with open mind. We can find a way to benefit our existing customers. But once again, that doesn't mean that we can let anybody to show up, but we have to make sure that they bring in the good agreement that protect existing customers. And then also affiliate interest concern that I had some conversation with two partners. There is an internal check mechanism. That is, they are subject to SEC regulation, at least in the BlackRock, and also there is internal control because they are different fund. Being said, also, once again, we can deal with it in our rate case if they misbehave. Overall, I think the transparency of their financial situation is better with this deal because now the department can inject scope of annual audit, financial audit, which is a lot better than as of today. So that's why in overall package, we address most of the concern that opposing party had a concern with through either our conditions, and I try to explain with existing system can manage and handle those risks. That's why I made this motion that I think this is this transaction is consistent with public interest.
Now, Madam Chair, thank you, Commissioner Hom. I appreciate you digging into this docket as deeply as you do. As you know, I like to dig into some dockets deeply, and so I always appreciate it when other commissioners dive into it. And you have, of course, you've been a good worker here. You've been a great commissioner too, so we appreciate that. Again, Ms. Owen, do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path, and leave a trail. Okay? You didn't tell me, though, that the trail that I had to cut is through a lot of bramble. Okay? There's been a lot of bramble. I think of my daughter going to the Boundary Waters, and she always took very seriously, you got to get 150 feet away from the shore to get your firewood. And she would shoot off into the woods, and the little kid would be scooting through no trails, and I'm digging through the bramble and thorns and everything. And so you left us a few brambles and a few thorns to work through here. I was very skeptical going into this, trying to understand where this was taking me and where this was taking the Minnesota Regulatory Compact. As Commissioner Hom is, we're very proud of that compact. I come at it from a very Republican standpoint, a very populist, what was created years ago by some very conservative Republicans was this thing called the Regulatory Compact. And we trust companies to make some of the tough decisions and take us down difficult paths at a time. I really became convinced, as Commissioner Hom did, was when I realized that the goal here was to grow this Minnesota company. When I go into and saw the past orders from prior, acquisitions, okay, was also just kind of the devaluing of the company. It didn't become Minnesotan anymore. I have a brother-in-law up in Fergus Falls, worked for Otter Tail Power for years. and retired now. If you need a deck up in Fergus Falls, call Saul Brothers. He'd be ready to build you a deck. I mean, he's happy in retirement. But he also has Great Plains as his gas provider. And he was just mad as all get out. Of course, complained to his commissioner brother because Great Plains wasn't responding to him. Okay. And no offense to Great Plains, the acquisition back then was a wise acquisition. It did save ratepayers money. But as a utility guy, he knew he could call up Otter Tail and get somebody out there to fix it. Okay. They trusted their local folks. Now all of a sudden he's calling to someplace out in Fargo, and I worry about calling someplace out in, India. We don't want that. We want to keep those jobs here. We want to keep those Minnesotans working. And so that's why I was very convinced when I saw labor come on board, and I saw the testimony from your financial person, Mr. Pranis, was very influential in me hearing their position coming into this. That really kind of started setting a different course in my mind that I could actually think this might be an okay process. But it was because of the commitment of the partners to grow this as a Minnesota company under the Minnesota Regulatory Compact. And I like to emphasize the Minnesota way. There's other regulatory compacts out there. We pride ourselves in our compact and how it works, okay? And it works because of all of these people around, even those that disagreed with you, okay? I probably, one of the things that I saw in the public comments was, well, we can't trust these 5 people to take control of these behemoth trillion-dollar giants that are coming in. Well, no, you can't, folks, okay? The 5 of us are not capable of doing it by ourselves. But Minnesota has done it because we've had LPI, we've had Energy Sense, we have OAG, we have department, we have CUB, we have our environmental groups, we have our labor folks who are very engaged in this process. So if it was just the 5 of us, okay, we'd be in trouble. But we have great staff that work hard, and we're at the tip of the spear only. And so it is important that as we go forward, and it really does fall, I think, on Ms. Katie, Ms. Owen, your company, you hold the olive branch, okay? We succeed because of what I always like to say is the birch room, kind of getting together and working collaboratively, okay? I know it's gotten a little chippy, okay? It's been a little tough. Some people might view this as a loss. I don't necessarily. I view it as thank you for the tough work that you did. It made, I think, the process better. Maybe you understand it. But the olive branch sits with you. I'm sure there'll be a little time of cooling off. But for this to be successful going forward for the partners, okay, is your team understanding that this Minnesota Compact is a lot of people working together smartly to make this happen. What's convinced me it's successful is because you want to bring investments to Minnesota, investments through this Minnesota utility to grow it to a stronger utility, even make it better for its ratepayers, okay? I see the benefit of having a possibility of data centers coming in here if something goes wrong with some of our other industries, okay? Because you don't build that infrastructure overnight. They have already built it, okay? A lot of it's there, okay? And it will be successful if we can work together with those future developers. So we appreciate your willingness to keep this a Minnesota company. But for this to work, it really is about the Minnesota Compact. And I want to emphasize the olive branch sits in your guys' hands. I want to see that being let out there. For friends at CUB, I know you invested a lot into this. I know you end up on the wrong end of the stick. That's okay. I hope you can see that it was a value. The value from the OAG, from you guys, from the environmental groups was valuable. The pushback was valuable. It helped me understand and put it in context. But don't lose sight of the fact now, if we do this, we got a process. We have a new process. It's a new path, okay? There's a lot more bramble clearing to be done, and we want you to help clear that bramble so that we can cut a new path for Miss Owen and her who actually said that, Miss Owen? I was trying to Emerson. So we're going to cut a new path. It's a different path. I like it actually better when I think about it than what has happened to the Otter, the Great Plains and to our Merck and those. I think it's a better path, okay? I think it's going to be a successful path, but one is that we need to continue to watch, okay? So I've been convinced of it. It's a new path. It's different, but I'm hoping it is a successful path, okay? And it requires even those who were still saying no, and which is their right to do, to now roll up your sleeves and make sure we can get back to the Birch Room and keep working forward with a positive result. Because if we can grow this utility as has been promised by the partners, the way that they have promised it, that will be a win for Minnesota ratepayers, and it will be a win for Minnesota's economy. And so that's what I see, and that's why I was convinced that this was in the public interest. But it's going to take a lot of work, and I think because of our regulatory compact and our commitment to that compact, and I think the partners' commitment to that compact after they were pushed and prodded and poked and pulled around, is a very thoughtful approach. And I appreciate that you see that we do a little thing different here, but it could be a success for your investment. So, Madam Chair, with that soliloquy, I do strongly support Commissioner Ham's motion.
Thank you, Chair Sieben, and thank you to my colleagues for your comments. I appreciate them. In starting, I know, Commissioner Toomey, you fashion yourself like the historian, which I appreciate, and I agree you are. But I do want to correct the record a little bit regarding the compact. I don't want to take away anything from FDR and the New Dealers, who were pretty important in the creation of the compact as well. So,
I got to go with the font from Wisconsin too.
Well, that's true.
They were pretty big into it too.
They were. Where I want to go is I started last week, Thursday, opposed to the deal. And I was concerned about a number of things. I didn't think that the record as developed up to last week, Thursday, was, it didn't get me across. It didn't meet the burden of proof that I think is with the utility. But what has happened over the last couple of days with the stipulation that has been provided and with the testimony and the last couple of days, I've gotten across the burden. So I think that you've met the burden, and I'm supportive of the acquisition. So I appreciated what Chair Sieben said earlier when she was talking about the public interest, and that has become really how I've seen this. I still do have concerns in the out years, and my decision option was pretty straightforward and clear. Like, I'm concerned about what happens, in the future, 10, 15 years from now. But I do think that the benefits in the near term and the medium term clearly outweigh the status quo and clearly show that the partners, the parties, are taking very serious the commitment to the state. $200 million or thereabouts in benefits to Minnesota Power ratepayers in the near term is very significant. The other day I had staff look up the last two rate cases, what we settled on for those, or what the commission ordered, and I think this is instructive and put some context around that $200 million number. The last rate case, the 23 rate case, we approved a settlement of $33.97 million. And the 21 rate case, we approved an increase of $58.8 million. So $200 million last time I checked is a lot bigger than the combined number there. So I don't know what future rate cases are going to be, but I think it's very clear that that it's going to take a very significant bite out of the next rate case and out of future rate cases, probably beyond that as well. So I think the benefit to Minnesota Power ratepayers in the near to medium term is very significant and outweighs a concern that I have about the long term. I think that the partners, that GIP and the Canadian Pension Plan, you have been flexible, and I appreciate that. And I think that for folks in Minnesota Power Service territory, I think that there will be significant benefits as a result of the acquisition. I appreciate the work of all the parties of labor, of the Department of Commerce, environmental organizations. I deeply appreciate the work of the Attorney General and CUB, CURE, and the environmental organizations. Like Commissioner Tuma was saying, I think that your work makes this significantly better, and I very much appreciate your advocacy. So with that, that is really where my head is at. I appreciate the decision options that have been proposed by my colleagues, the weatherization commitments proposed by Commissioner Partridge, the bill credit proposed by Chair Sieben. I think that the Commission has done a good job here in pushing the parties, and I really do thank staff for all the work that wherever he went. I was going to look at him. There he is. So I appreciate the work of staff. So with that, thank you. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I had one other last thing I did want to say, and I'm sorry to jump in, is that I did want to say, though, the work isn't done. I mean, there will be an order that comes out, and the acquisition will flow through, but the work isn't done. And I do want to, I always read the comments that people write. If people take the time to write them, I take the time to read them. And it's hard for me to say, is that a majority of people in northern Minnesota or what? It doesn't. What I can tell you is there's a significant amount of concern. And if people put their name on something, be it a personalized letter on a postcard, or if it's a form letter, that's telling and that's important. And I think that the partners, Minnesota Power, it is now on you to make sure that you build the credibility with them. And I think that it's going to, if you don't build that credibility, that will redound unfavorably to everybody, including this commission. So I talked about faith earlier. My hope is that you take that seriously, and that there is in the world right now, in this country, there's a significant amount of uncertainty and concern, and I think for a lot of people in northern Minnesota right now, a lot of people in the state, they're probably saying, well, just another crappy thing that's happened today. And my hope is that you take that and you use that as the opportunity that it is, and you build on it, and you build. And Mr. Brahm, you've said, and I appreciate that you've said, in your world, the trust is the currency of the realm, and I hope you use this as another opportunity to build that trust. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. So I prepared some notes because this is such a significant and important decision, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to say anything. I am just going to pass this around the table. Give that to Ms. Katie. Okay. So throughout this record, in parties' comments, in the ALJ report, and in countless public comments, people voiced very serious concerns about private equity as a broad category taking ownership of one of our public utilities. And I think those concerns were heightened because of the trust that Minnesota Power's community and customers have in the company itself. And when I started considering this acquisition, I too shared those concerns. I have also heard of examples of private equity firms buying companies in other industries and things going very, very badly for their workers, for their customers, and for the communities involved in those examples. private equity has a bad reputation, and in many cases, there are examples to support that bad reputation. However, by law, it is not our role to evaluate the role or the reputation of private equity in our economy broadly. In fact, Minnesota law makes no distinction between publicly traded investor-owned utilities versus privately held investor-owned utilities, not in our consideration of an acquisition, nor in consideration of how we regulate them. Rather, we are here to evaluate whether this specific proposed acquisition is in the public interest, given these particular investors, with the specific commitments included in the agreements in this case, and considering Minnesota law and the expansive regulatory authority of this commission. And I came at this task with, as others have said, a high degree of skepticism, and I would say even cynicism. I considered parties' various scenarios of how private equity firms have acted or could act to profit excessively at the expense of the company, of workers, customers, and the communities they serve. And to each of those scenarios, I applied the protections inherent in our state law, in our authority as the Public Utilities Commission. I applied the voluntary and enforceable commitments these investors have made through their settlement agreements and the conditions that the Commission added and that the investors have agreed to, and the economic consequences that these investors would face as a result of their actions. In other words, I assumed the absolute worst in these investors, and I tested whether our regulations and the enforceable commitments of these agreements would hold up to protect the utility, its workers, its customers, and the communities Minnesota Power serves. And in each scenario, I could not find a way for these investors to both make a profit and cause harm to the utility and its workers, its customers, and its communities. In many cases, these investors themselves have agreed to protections and made enforceable commitments that would not allow them to profit off of the harmful gains that parties have feared. For instance, these partners have voluntarily agreed to labor protections, including maintaining local employment levels, maintaining wages and benefits for their non-union employees, honoring agreements with organized labor, prioritizing local organized labor going forward, and committing to paying prevailing wage. The investors voluntarily agreed that they cannot access dividends, which is how investors pull profit out of the companies they own, unless they fully fund Minnesota Power's 5-year capital plan, as they've committed, maintain the Commission's approved debt-to-equity ratio, protecting Minnesota Power's financial health, and they cannot access dividends if Minnesota Power's credit rating drops below investment grade. The investors have also agreed that they cannot pass on to ratepayers any costs of this transaction. They cannot pass on to ratepayers any increase in the cost of debt that they cause. They have agreed to Commissioner Ham's additional transparency requirements, including reporting in keeping with current SEC requirements, and to conduct an independent audit scoped by and provided to the Department of Commerce. In addition to these protections, this commission has and will maintain authority over rates charged to customers by Minnesota Power. We will also maintain authority over the energy resources that Minnesota Power invests in going forward. Nothing in this transaction weakens or alters the authority of this commission. Minnesota Power will remain a fully regulated public utility under Minnesota law, as our laws, again, make no distinction between publicly traded and privately held companies. And I can also assure you that this commission never has and never will rubber stamp an increase to rates, whether coming from a publicly traded investor-owned utility or a privately held investor-owned utility. Finally, it wasn't enough for me, it wasn't enough for this commission or the Department of Commerce or the settling parties that we simply ensure that the partners provide sufficient capital and protect our ratepayers. Rather, we needed to see real, meaningful benefits. And so Chair Sieben asked the investors for tens of millions of dollars in direct credits to customers on their bills. The investors have agreed to $50 million in bill credits. That's $50 million back to customers. I asked the investors to fund $10 million worth of home efficiency improvements to permanently lower the household energy costs of low and moderate income customers by reducing their home heating and cooling loads. They said yes. Energy Sense Coalition and others asked the partners to fund $3.5 million to buy down overdue bills for customers who have struggled to pay their bills and to catch up. They said yes. The department pushed the partners to commit $50 million towards a future clean energy resource, lowering the cost for customers of a needed energy resource identified and approved by the commission in a future IRP. They said yes. All of this will be fully funded by the investors and benefit our ratepayers. Frankly, these are all commitments we could not have achieved through the public market, and they will directly reduce the bills of Minnesota Power's customers now and going forward. I cannot remark on the character of these investors before us, but I was unable to maintain my cynicism as I went through the exercise of applying these commitments to all of the possible scenarios raised in the docket of how they might take advantage of customers and of our communities and our workers. As I see it, every way I could look at it, this deal is only good for these investors if Minnesota Power does well. And that is exactly the kind of agreement we want to see, aligned incentives. So I believe this agreement is in the public interest, and I support approval. I want to say thank you to all of the parties, including the parties who really tested this model and who really pushed to say, how could this go wrong? Because it helped me think through this. It helped parties create commitments that would protect against those things, and it helped the commission push for commitments that will protect customers going forward. Thank you to the investors for your flexibility and willingness to work with us and with the agencies and parties. And thank you, Minnesota Power, for also working with everyone to find a good path forward. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Partridge, and to my other colleagues. Your bravery, honesty, and commitment to make this a better process for the public good is really recognized by me, and I'm very grateful for your camaraderie and willingness to work so hard on what I know has been a very difficult docket for all of us. So thank you to my colleagues, first of all, and second of all, to, again, I've said it, but we can't say it enough, to our staff. In a day when public employees are under threat and attack in so many different venues, I think it's really worth celebrating the good work that public employees are doing every day to help us arrive at the best decisions possible. So overall reasons why I support the acquisition. The Minnesota PUC is going to retain its oversight over Minnesota Power. Again, we're a state regulatory agency, and we will continue to regulate Minnesota Power, its rates, resource acquisitions, service quality standards, and other important functions that get to the very core of why we regulate as we do. The laws of Minnesota that apply to Minnesota Power remain, and we will continue to regulate Minnesota Power under the laws and rules of the state of Minnesota. There was much consternation, and quite honestly, it drove me nuts for people, including some of the people in this room, to say that the acquisition was needed for the state's clean energy transition. Whether Minnesota Power is publicly traded or privately held, it needs to comply with the laws of the state of Minnesota, including the state's 2040 carbon-free law. But that gets me to my next point. Minnesota Power does need massive amounts of investment. That's not due to the state's carbon-free law necessarily, but also due to the fact that many of the utility's assets are at end of age and need investment. I think of the northern, I just forgot the name of it, the northern transmission line that brings hydro resources from Canada, and the commission recently, Great Northern, thank you, that we approved about a year and a half ago. I think of the transmission lines that are needed to interconnect Minnesota to North Dakota and the end of the useful life and age of some of their generation facilities. Investment is needed for reliable, affordable service. Infrastructure investments are necessary because we in Minnesota need an integrated energy system to serve Minnesota, northern Minnesota, and its important industries and businesses that are really the backbone of our state. Reliability and affordability is the reason this commission should approve the acquisition. The fact that the commission will continue to ensure that the utility meets its obligations is secondary in my rationale for why this is in the public interest. I talked about it earlier, and my colleagues articulated it really well. What are the actual benefits of this acquisition to the public? Had the acquisition not occurred, the net benefits weren't clear to the ALJ, and quite honestly, as we've heard from my colleagues today, weren't clear to some of us at different stages. But I think it's, again, worth recognizing that that's kind of where this magic happened, where settling parties or opponents continued to seek and to file into the record additional things that they thought were needed to get it over the net benefit threshold of what would be in the public interest. Some said they'd never support it, which is fine, and you're welcome to have that view. But for us who sit in these chairs, we again have to apply the law as it exists to the petition that's in front of us. So the net benefits that again have been articulated well by my colleagues, but I think are especially important, are the rate credits and the benefits that will go to Minnesota Power customers. And these benefits, again, and credits would not happen but if we approved the acquisition. So while it's not a perfect docket, and there are things I would change if I was able to do it on my own, I really commend the work of all of the parties, the partners, my colleagues, for helping us get to a place that I think we can all be very proud of. The final thing I'll say is just that while I understand this has been somewhat contentious, and I echo the sentiments of my colleagues, we need to look forward. Right now, either in the United States or from different the federal government, there are different things that are pushing up electricity rates across the country. And we, as a regulatory body and a public agency, need to work with everyone in this room to help control overall costs so that, again, Minnesotans can continue to rely on and have affordable and reliable power. So thank you, Commissioner Hom, for your leadership in this docket. If there aren't any more comments from or any additional things from staff, I would ask that commissioners vote on orally on Commissioner Hom's motion as amended. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of Commissioner Hom? Oh, please, Commissioner Sullivan.
Maybe I'm dense, but I missed if you moved the motion. Could you just read all of the decision options? Or did you do that? Or
No.
you moved your motion?
Yes, I moved my pre-filed motion with amendment.
Okay.
And the amendment was the date of January 15th for the IRP
Yep, now I
filing.
remember. Okay.
Okay.
It's all
So,
inclusive of the final settlements.
yes, and as outlined on his October 3rd filing.
Okay.
On Commissioner Ham's motion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you, everyone. There's no other business before the commission today. We are adjourned.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.